Hello everybody! I'm just being lazy today because today is test day for one of the diapers I'm going to do a review on. So I do more than a day of testing. I think I'm in day like 3 of wearing these diapers to see how they stack up. I've worn them before, but I haven't had any of them in about a year because the first time I tried them, I didn't like them at all, and I've not been quiet about the fact that I didn't like them at all. I have been subtly hinting at the fact that I'm going to do a review of these one day, and it seems that day is finally coming. So first I'll show you the shirt. This is a shirt that I got. It's a cat, but it's got different way going. What are these things called? Not sprinkles. Sequins. They're sequins. Different way going sequins. So it's a cat with glasses and you can't see his eyes, but then you do this and you can see that he has love hearts in his eyes. I bought this for my op shop challenge, and you guys can see that in a little while. That one will be coming out soon, but the diaper that I'm testing out, I bet you can already tell what it is. Da 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 da. It's little squirts. I hope you're all excited because I'm not excited. I realize that I sound very, very ungrateful sitting here in a diaper complaining right now that my job today is to read stories and to test out diapers, but they're just, I don't like them. They smell bad. Oh god. Okay, so what are we up to? I think we're up to chapter 8 today. What were we doing last time? Oh, she was very close to having a spanking last time. I wonder if she'll end up getting a spanking this time. So here we go. This is chapter 8 of Littleland. After a surprisingly palatable breakfast of yogurt and sliced bananas, Vanessa was set down inside the playpen in the daycare centre. The threat of that afternoon's disciplinary measures loomed over Vanessa's head, and she looked uncertainly up at Miss Mia after she'd been placed on the floor. "I'll come get you after lunch for our talk," she said, lightly, leaning down to place a kiss on the top of Vanessa's head. "Be a good girl." Vanessa's stomach churned as she watched her caregiver disappear down the hallway. "Ooh, a talk," said Piper, to her left. "I know what that means." Vanessa sighed and turned towards Piper, who was again lounging atop the large stuffed bear. "Yeah," said Vanessa, dolefully, who also had a firm grasp on what the phrase had meant. "Don't worry, it's not so bad," said Piper. "You say that about everything," said Vanessa. "I really don't believe you about this one." "Well," began Piper, "it'll be painful, true, and you'll probably cry like a little girl." "But?" asked Vanessa. "But it won't last forever." This notion was surprisingly comforting to Vanessa. It was true. Her spanking wasn't likely to last forever. If she could just close her eyes and remember to breathe, she would be okay. Probably. The last time she was spanked, it had been at the request of a partner, an attempted adventure at what she had called kink. But Vanessa hadn't been able to take her partner seriously and had fallen off of her lap and onto the floor in gales of laughter. That hadn't been a serious spanking though, and her partner hadn't been 1,000 feet tall. Though, how long could a spanking possibly take? 10, 15 minutes? She'd be fine. Piper, as if clairvoyant, spoke. 45 minutes to an hour, tops." "An hour?" asked Vanessa, incredulously, louder than she'd intended. "She's going to spank me for an hour?" Miss Emily entered the room, Aiden in her arms. "Whoa, calm down," said Piper, her hands in the air. "It was a guess. I've never been punished by Mia before. I'm just going off my own experiences." Miss Emily stooped down to place Aiden into the playpen. He was wrapped in a blanket and had a pacifier between his lips. His eyes were red. "Miss Emily," asked Piper, jumping from the bear's lap and walking quickly to the perimeter of the playpen to crane her neck upward. Yes, darling, responded Miss Emily. How long do you spank people for? Miss Emily looked surprised to be asked such a question. Well, she paused and thought, I suppose it depends. On what? Asked Piper. Miss Emily laughed. Well, on a whole bunch of things, honey. She leaned down to rest her elbows on the top of the playpen as she spoke. What the little one did, how much of a lesson they need to learn, how much they can handle. How do you know? Vanessa spoke up, timidly. Asked Miss Emily, turning her head towards Vanessa, who squirmed at the direct attention. How do we know what? How do you know how much we can handle? Said Vanessa, addressing her shoes. Miss Emily smiled gently and unlatched the playpen gate to step inside. The large woman sat down on the floor in between Piper and Vanessa. She reached out and took Vanessa's hand, which she cupped between her own. There's lots of things we look for while we've got a little one over our knee, she said, rubbing the trembling girl's hand. Your breathing, the noises you're making, for just 2 examples. I have known your new caregiver for years and years, honey, said Miss Emily, looking earnestly at Vanessa. I don't have a single doubt that you're in safe hands. Vanessa stole a glance at Miss Emily and found nothing but honesty in her deep brown eyes. It's going to hurt a little bit, that's what a spanking's for, but you're going to be completely safe, she said. I promise. The others arrived later, wrapped similarly to Aiden. Danny, who appeared to be asleep in Mickey's arms, and Frank and Dr. Gilbert's, with a scowl on his red face that was rapidly becoming trademark. What's wrong with you? Asked Piper, after they'd been set down in the playpen and bade farewell by their shared caretakers. It's obvious, don't be tense, said Danny. He rolled his eyes, still groggy from his nap. Frank, still wrapped in a blanket, frowned silently. Oh, right, said Piper, a look of genuine realization in her eyes. Sorry. Danny waved a hand in her direction and laid down upon the floor, resting his head on a stray teddy bear. Can you do me a favour, though? Asked Piper, still addressing Danny despite his rapidly drooping eyelids. He asked, his eyes closed. Can you tell Vanessa it wasn't that bad? She's panicking. Vanessa coloured, but didn't admonish Piper for the request. Despite Miss Emily's heartfelt reassurance, Vanessa still felt a deep and churning anxiety in her stomach. Danny's eyes opened then. My butt hurts, but I'm alive, he said, shrugging. It wasn't as bad as the one I got yesterday. Which one did it, though? Oh, hang on, sorry, give me a sec. Props. Props again. Which one did it, though? Oh, oh my gosh. Props upon props upon props upon props. Which one did it, though? Asked Aiden, who'd been silent in his own blanket cocoon up until this point. The blonde one or the scary one? Does that make much of a difference? Asked Danny, his expression quizzical. I think so, said Aiden, struggling to sit up. The blonde one has smaller hands, and the other one looks like he'd eat you. Mickey doesn't give spankings, said Piper, knowledgeably, as she began to chew her fingernails. Yeah, she's right, he doesn't. He's more like... Danny paused, considering. A big brother, muttered Frank. Danny looked at Frank, surprised at his contribution, and he nodded. Yeah, that's exactly what he's like. The doctor handles... that stuff. Danny waved his hands dismissively, not mentioning specifics. But yeah, quiet girl. It wasn't that bad. Speak for yourself, said Aiden, morosely. Mine was horrible. The others regarded him, nonplussed. Piper quirked a small smile. Horrible, she repeated. A spanking from Miss Emily was horrible. Aiden nodded, pulling his blanket tighter around his face. Piper's smile quivered as she fought laughter. It was the most embarrassing thing ever, said Aiden emphatically. It didn't hurt, but it was the worst. It didn't hurt? Vanessa's heart gave a gentle leap. If the humiliation was the worst part of it, then maybe she'd be able to survive what was to come. Piper lost the fight and began to laugh in earnest. Of course it didn't hurt, she giggled. Miss Emily's a human sunflower. She couldn't hurt anybody. I'm not sure why I'd want to hurt anybody, Piper, Miss Emily called good-naturedly from across the room. Also, sunflowers are lovely, so thank you for the compliment. Piper's laughter tapered off, and she looked at Vanessa, who had visibly relaxed over the course of the conversation. See, you're going to be fine, she said. Although, she paused, and in an instant, the worry was once again visible on Vanessa's face. I've never been spanked by Miss Mia before. She's just a touch sterner than Miss Emily. Her hands are bigger than Miss Emily's, said Aiden, thoughtfully. What is it with you and hands today? It seemed as soon as Vanessa had been able to put the looming threat of a sore bottom out of her mind, the time had arrived. Her first day in the nursery had been pleasant, if a little strange. The 3 freshly spanked boys had gradually come out from beneath their blankets and joined Vanessa and Piper in digging through the toy chest. They created a large tower out of blocks, and Vanessa couldn't help but feel a surge of strange pride as she watched it grow taller and taller. Miss Emily brought out snacks and tied large bibs around their necks before they ate. Aiden, true to form, smeared chocolate crumbs and strawberry all over his face. After she finished cleaning the last traces of snack time from Aiden's face, Miss Emily joined them on the floor and read to them some story about a brightly coloured lizard. Vanessa wasn't paying any attention to the story. She just lay on the floor and revelled in a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. A complete and total lack of anxiety. That feeling was shattered, of course, directly after Miss Emily closed the book and Miss Mia appeared and scooped Vanessa from the playroom floor. Out the door she was taken, away from safety, and down the corridor towards certain doom. The room they arrived in was unremarkable. It contained a single couch and a single window with blue curtains. Next to the couch was a small brown chest of drawers. Miss Mia seated herself on the couch and stood Vanessa up directly before her. Miss Mia fixed the small girl with a well-practiced stern gaze, and Vanessa immediately began to squirm. Okay, sweetheart, began Miss Mia, folding her hands in her lap as she spoke. It's time to have a chat about yesterday. Okay, whispered Vanessa, barely audible. I'd like you to tell me what you did yesterday, said Miss Mia. I stammered Vanessa, her palms immediately growing hot. I tried to escape. I was scared and I didn't want to be in here, and I started looking around for a way to get out. Go on, said Miss Mia. It was my idea to try and reach the latch. I see. So, nobody else should really be getting into trouble, it should just be me, said Vanessa, her fingers twisting themselves into anxious knots. Honey, please don't worry about everyone else, said Miss Mia, who had reached out to take one of Vanessa's hands. You're not responsible for everyone's behaviour. Just your own, okay? And you've been a very good girl just now, admitting all of that to me. Vanessa's heart fluttered. It was very brave of you to tell me the whole truth, said Miss Mia, patting her hand. I'm very proud of you. Miss Mia's warm tone washed over Vanessa like the water in last night's bath, and it soothed her. You're still going to get a spanking though, warned Miss Mia. She gave Vanessa's hand a gentle squeeze. Just to help you learn a few lessons. Vanessa nodded woodenly. Oddly, she felt no urge to flee, merely an urge to get this whole thing over and done with. She stayed rooted to the spot and closed her eyes tightly. Okay, she whispered. I'm ready. Such a brave girl, said Miss Mia. Vanessa felt her dress being raised. Her diaper was removed, and her bottom dabbed gently with a baby wipe. Vanessa felt herself being lifted, and she was upended over Miss Mia's broad, floral-patterned lap. Miss Mia placed one hand on Vanessa's back, and the other on her diminutive bottom. Vanessa let out a soft gasp. The single hand was large enough to completely cover her backside. Miss Mia began to rub circles on Vanessa's back. Despite her precarious position and the relentless anxiety she was experiencing, Vanessa couldn't help being slightly comforted by this gesture. She let out a shaky sigh, squeezed her eyes shut, and pressed her face into Miss Mia's skirt. I'm going to spank you now, honey. But I want you to be brave, and I want you to think about why you're over my knee. Do you think you can do that for me? Vanessa nodded wordlessly, her face pressed firmly into the couch cushion. Use your words, please, darling, said Miss Mia, patting her exposed bottom and causing the small girl to shiver and groan at the thought of forming words. She wasn't even sure if she could. Yes, ma'am. Good girl, honey. Such a good girl. Miss Mia raised her hand and brought it down firmly upon Vanessa's bottom. The sting was immediate, as was a deeper pain that radiated in her bones. Miss Mia spanked her methodically, never varying from that same slow pace. The pain wasn't excessive, but it was sharp enough to make Vanessa curl her toes. Miss Mia spanked her in silence for several minutes, during which her bottom began to blush a light pink, which gradually deepened to match the humiliated shade that graced Vanessa's other set of cheeks. Okay, honey, are you with me? Asked Miss Mia, still spanking steadily, and Vanessa nodded. Said Miss Mia. Use your words, please. We need to have a bit of a chat. A chat? Vanessa was in no position to speak. Still, she made an attempt. Tried Vanessa, her voice catching. Yes, ma'am. Good girl, said Miss Mia. I want you to tell me why you're being spanked right now. Started Vanessa, her stomach swirling. Vanessa stammered. You can do it, sweetheart. Be brave and use your words. Why are you being spanked? This only served to deepen the humiliation that Vanessa was experiencing, and her stomach continued to swirl. Her breathing quickened, and her eyes filled with tears. Because I tried to escape, choked Vanessa, mortified. Miss Mia began to rub Vanessa's back as she continued to warm Vanessa's rapidly reddening backside. Good girl. Yes, that's exactly why you're being spanked, said Miss Mia. But I wonder if you can tell me, why is trying to escape not allowed? 'Cause you don't want us to leave? Tried Vanessa, squirming slightly to avoid the descending hand. Asked Miss Mia, grasping her tight around the waist. Why wouldn't we want you to leave? Then you wouldn't have anyone to do this to, wailed Vanessa, kicking her legs. Please stop. Stop. The tears spilled from Vanessa's eyes, leaving a small soaked patch on Miss Mia's skirt. She chuckled lightly, but ignored the request. she continued in her discipline. We're not done yet, honey. You need to work out the answer to my question. I don't know, because escaping's naughty, asked Vanessa, grimacing around the cloying, childish language that had just escaped her mouth, and from the fire that burned her rear. Yes, it is, agreed Miss Mia. But why is it naughty? Because it's dangerous. It's dangerous to sit on someone's shoulders, just like it's dangerous to jump off the changing table. Very good, sweetie, said Miss Mia, her hand slowing. My job is to keep you safe, and what you did yesterday was not very safe. Do you understand me? Yes, Miss Mia, I understand. So if you ever get it in your mind to do something that dangerous ever again, this is where you'll end up. For emphasis, Miss Mia gave the sobbing girl 4 extra hard strokes on her already thoroughly punished backside. Ah! Vanessa cried anew at the last 4 stinging strokes. I won't be dangerous. Miss Mia's hand came to rest atop Vanessa's dark pink cheeks and began to rub in slow, soft circles. Vanessa sobbed and gasped, prostrate over Miss Mia's lap. Good girl, she murmured. Such a good girl. Miss Mia allowed Vanessa some time to gather herself after her very first spanking. During that time, she stroked the girl's hair and patted her scorched bottom. Gradually, the tears ceased and Vanessa's breathing steadied. When Vanessa began to stir, Miss Mia lifted the girl up and enveloped her in a comforting embrace. You did so well, sweetheart. I am so proud of you. That's the end of chapter 8. See, Miss Mia's nice. She's just big and scary. Sorry, I'm feeling all like... I'm just feeling little. Which is a bad way to be on camera. But I just... Yeah. Like, it's weird that I'm being like this when, like, if I'm actually about to be spanked, then it's a whole different story, but just like... Anyway, I hope you guys like chapter 8, and I will see you next week for chapter 9. Ooh. I hope you guys have a lovely week. Bye, everybody.